the conversation, she was talking, we were just like catching up, and she was talking about how she's been doing so well with her habits and her routines, and like she started the new year off and she's been really consistent. And we were like, what would it be, like 12 days in? So she was really hype about that. And she was telling me at the end that, but I'm still not perfect. And when she said that, I was just like thinking to myself, like, wow, I felt attacked by that. And then I thought to myself, like, I've been doing this thing where anytime I feel like a little triggered, I think back, like, why did whatever that person say make me feel a certain way? So I asked myself, like, what caused you to feel that way, and why did you feel that way? So in that moment, I kind of questioned, and I asked her, I was like, well, when do you think you'll achieve perfection with your habits? Like, when do you think like your routine will absolutely be perfect? And she was just like, she didn't really have an answer. Like, and she knew I was calling her out because she knew it was like setting this impossible bar. And she was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I have certain things I want to hit, but it's never actually going to be perfect. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, a lot of times when we're trying to build something, we think we're going to get to this like masterpiece or this perfection, and we're not going to actually get there. Like you said, feeling the need to be perfect had me in a chokehold for a very long time. Love that you're talking about this. I'm tuned in. Yes, exactly. So yeah, when after she had said that, we both kind of like laughed about it, because we were like, yeah, we set these crazy impossible standards that we're never going to hit. And I think it's good and bad. Like, it's good because it gives us something to want to strive for when we're trying to be perfect, or we're trying to get better at things, like when we're trying to get to some certain standard. But also it sets us up for failure, because we're never actually going to get there. And that's what leads to like feeling like you're not disciplined, feeling like you don't have motivation, feeling like you can't stay consistent with anything. Usually it comes from this sense of like, I need to be perfect with whatever I'm doing. And you absolutely do not need to be perfect. Because I'm going to share some things on why you don't need to be perfect, how to let go of it. And I also wanted to share that today I found out that I was featured in Business Insider, which was freaking exciting. And if anyone watching this has seen the article or sent me a message or sent me a comment, I haven't replied yet. It's because I'm a little overwhelmed with the responses, but I'm going to get back to you. And I really appreciate you reaching out. But the crazy, wild thing about this was Business Insider reached out to me, and I'm going to share a little bit of like the background of the story. They reached out to me like via email, and you know how sometimes you get reached out by things and you think it's like fake. So at first when I saw the email, I thought it was fake. I was like, oh, let me research the person who emailed me. Let me look up if this is actually Business Insider, or they call themselves Insider now. And I looked it up, and it was an actual person. Like, she worked there. I found her information. This was real. So I was like, oh shoot. So the first thing I got hit with was, oh my God, they're really reaching out to me. They really want to talk to me. And then I got hit with the imposter syndrome and the lack of like belief, because that's how perfection be hitting you sometimes. And then I was like, you know what? Let me respond. Let's have this conversation. So then we set up the date to do the interview. Before it, I was freaking out. I barely told anyone, because I was just like so nervous that I was like, oh my God, like, let me just silently prepare and like do my best and see what happens. In the back of my mind, I was like, what if it doesn't even get published? Like, you know how you have those crazy like thoughts that just, the negative thoughts becoming at you wild. But I said, you know what, F all of that. Like, I don't need to go into this interview being perfect. They came to me for a reason. Let me just go be myself and spread my message. So if anyone watching doesn't know who I am, what the heck I do, I'm Sade Kelly. I'm a time management coach, and I specifically help 9-to-5ers, side hustlers, full-time entrepreneurs manage their time so that they can achieve their professional and personal goals without sacrificing their self-care. So after I had went and did the interview, I felt so good about it. It went really well. I was like crazy sweating. I was so nervous. But I think it really came across really well, because the questions she asked me, I was like ready and I was flowing, and it went really well. And then I didn't know when the interview was going to actually like come out. So the crazy thing is I had no idea it was going to come out today. Like, I had no idea when it was going to come out. She was like, it could be January, it could be February, it could be March, but it's going to come out eventually. So I was like, okay, whatever. Didn't think about it. And then when it came out today, I was just like in disbelief. I was like, oh my God, it really is out there. Like, this is so cool. So I ended up asking the women who interviewed me, like, how did you even find me in the first place? Because you always want to know those type of things. Like, I was just curious. And she was like, I found you online. Like, I found you through your website, and I saw your content, checked it out, and I decided I wanted to go further with this. And I really wanted your perspective on how side hustlers can have lucrative businesses on the side, how they can avoid burnout, manage their time better. And I was just like, wow. Like, imagine if I let my idea of perfection and like hold me back from ever starting this business. Because I did for a long time. When I first started my blog, it was one of those things where I thought I had it to be perfect. I thought my website needed to be perfect, and I delayed the idea over and over and over again. But now what I've been doing is really releasing that idea of perfection. Like, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, and I'm really big on like, just put the content out there. Anything you're thinking, anything you're doing in your regular life is content, put it out there. You want a beautiful website, it doesn't need to be perfect, but like put something out there that works for you. And you never know like how you will get recognized. So knowing that that is how I was even able to get an opportunity like this, of course, it came down to like the work that I've done, the testimonials I've gotten for people, and like my area of expertise and everything. But it also comes down to like just putting myself out there and not letting perfection hold me back. And I'm just so happy that happened. So if anything, I hope that story inspires you, that you stop trying to be perfect. Like, you never know the opportunities that are going to come about in your life. So let's talk a little bit more though about some tips. So I do want to leave you with some advice. And if you have any questions about perfection, anything you want to share, drop it in the chat if you can relate to this. But I was reading on this study, and I can really relate to this study, and it was all about these kids. They did a study at UC Berkeley in California, and they studied these kids. And if you grew up like in the early 2000s, you probably went through this. I don't know if kids go through this now in school, but there was this thing where you would get like stars for acknowledgement. Like, and pretty much if you did well in school, you got stars. And if you didn't do so well in school, you know, you felt it. Like, you weren't recognized as much. It was kind of like, oh, you're here, you did okay. But if you had stars and recognition, like, you felt more worthy in a sense. So they did this study, and they found that kids who went through that type of treatment in school ended up internalizing that their worth is tied to like how close to perfect that they can be. So you think about it, like getting close to like 100 or getting 100 made you feel like you were the top of the class and you were perfect in a sense. You were great and you were praised for it. So the kids being exposed to that so young affected them in their adult lives. And as someone who was like taken out of like regular classes and put into like gifted and talented classes, which to this day I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, maybe it was a little bit harder than usual, but whatever. As someone who was kind of put through that, I definitely can relate to like that feeling of like, all right, achievement equals like my worth. And I had to break that, especially when I became an entrepreneur. I realized like that was truly holding me back. And if I kept seeing like my achievements as my worth, then it would just, I would always be upset. Like, I couldn't control my emotions. It was like, if I wasn't achieving, I felt like a failure. I felt like nothing. I didn't know what to do. Like, and also I'm an Enneagram 3, which is like, we thrive on achievement, if you know anything about Enneagrams. So that kind of held me back too. But I had to really get used to allowing myself to make mistakes. And I had to kind of like reframe how I see mistakes. So if you're a perfectionist, I know for sure that you deal with anxiety. Right? I feel like it's kind of one-on-one. Hey, so if you are a perfectionist, you definitely deal with anxiety. It's because we are constantly trying to be the best we can be, even though we're not even sure what the best we can be even is. We just think we're gonna hit some threshold of perfect, right? So you have to really get comfortable making mistakes. And I used to think mistakes were like the end all be all, like the worst thing you could ever do. But now I've learned mistakes are just something that teaches you a lesson. And as long as you can allow yourself to make mistakes and do it gracefully, you will truly stop letting perfection hold you back. So that's my first tip. If you are dealing with perfectionism, it's stopping you from taking action. It's stopping you from utilizing your time the way you want. It's stopping you from pursuing opportunities or even just putting yourself out there. It's stopping you from, putting yourself in certain predicaments, etc. Like, perfectionism stops you from many things. Then the first thing I want you to do is get really comfortable with mistakes and just see them as a learning point. I know we talk about this a lot, we hear this a lot, but like, we really have to work through it. And in one way I help myself kind of like get really good with mistakes is I would purposely put myself in places where I would make mistakes. I would purposely put myself in places where I had to be uncomfortable. I would purposely put myself in places where I was fearful of what was going to happen. And I even did a challenge I think I started in 2019. I did it in 2020 as well. I did those 2 years where all of February I did something called Fearless February. And every day of the month I would do something super scary. Like, I would try to find something every single day. And it could range from like public speaking to taking a cold shower, going to a new part of town, or trying a new store, or calling on someone I haven't talked to in years. Like, anything that I felt fear around, I told myself, yes, you're going to do it. As soon as you felt the fear, just like train yourself to do it. And I think that also helped me because I made a lot of mistakes trying new things, and it kind of trained that muscle. It's like something you can build up. You can build up that willpower. I see Carolyn wrote, this is so true. Reminding me of my school days. I don't have anxiety, but I realize I have held back recently. Just need to get it done. Yeah. Why do you think, Carolyn, that you have been holding yourself back? Like, because if you don't feel that it is anxiety, what do you think it is? Do you think it's perfectionism? Do you think it's like you're afraid you're not gonna like get yourself to a certain standard? I would love to hear like what you think it is. But that's definitely holding yourself back, man. Whew, perfectionism will hold you back. Another story I want to share too before I move on to the second tip. Like, I remember when I first started my blog, The Fire Inside was originally a blog. Now it's a time management coaching company. But when it was a blog back in like 2017, when I first started, I wrote a blog post, and I believe it was on like, oh my goodness, I don't remember exactly what it was on. It was something about personal development, but I don't remember exactly. I think it was like handling hard situations or something like that, because I was like thrown into my first advertising job, and it was like high stress, and I needed to figure out coping mechanisms, and I wanted to share it on my blog, and that's why I started the blog in the first place. So after I started the blog, what I ended up doing was I got traffic. People were watching me online. I got new followers. Like, the blog was getting some traffic. You would think anyone reasonably would be happy about that. I was terrified about it, to the point where I was like, I need to take the blog down. I'm getting too much attention. What are people going to think? I was like so worried about who I was going to please and not please what people would think, that I stopped blogging for like 8 months to a year. And I did not do my second blog post until like late or mid 2018, which is like insane to think about. But I held myself back because I had like these high standards. I was so caught up in what people were going to think of me, how I was going to come across. And if you're ever feeling those things, like, completely let that go. Like, this live is all about like encouraging you to let that go. Those feelings are always going to be there, even with the things I've been able to get now, like being able to take a side hustle, a blog, and like turn it into a whole coaching business, go after my dreams in a way I didn't think I could ever do, and like be here now being featured in like a huge business publication is like wild to me still. And I still have those feelings of like, oh, could this have been better? Like, you know, that's still a thought that comes up, especially if you're like recovering from perfectionism. Okay, Carolyn said standards. I have so much content, and I have to remember that people don't know what I know. Exactly. That's the thing. Like, it's the simplest stuff. The stuff that you think no one would care about is the stuff people love to actually read from you and learn from you. Some of the things I've been putting out lately has been stuff where I was just like, I'm starting to really tune into what people react to. So let's say I did a couple presentations this week. I did a really fun class on Monday. I did a class on Tuesday. I did a live on Wednesday. I'm also having a free training next week. And some things I've noticed, when I say certain things, I get certain reactions, and I'm like, wow, people think I've been paying attention to basically to what people are paying attention to, like what they're being amazed by. And it's little stories and little things that you've done, or like simple stuff and practical things that really stick with people the most. So if you have content that you're holding on to, put it out there. Like, don't be afraid of like a certain standard, because the thing is with content too, like, you're not going to get better until you put it out there and you've tested it and you tweaked it and you've learned from it. Like, now, if you see my production, my content, you're probably like, oh wow, this is great. But if you scroll back, if you want to scroll back like last year or 2 years ago, it was not to this level, right? And I only got better because I practiced it and I stopped being so caught up in being perfect. So my second tip, that was a long first tip, but the first tip essentially was allow yourself to make mistakes. So the second tip I have is to make sure you set reasonable goals for yourself, right? When you're a perfectionist, sometimes you think you're superhuman. You view yourself as, completely different than anybody else. And I know that for sure that I do that. My therapist has clarified that one for me. So I have to let go of this superhuman, impossible standards, crazy long to-do list. Like, I can get all these things done in a day. Like, you got to let go of all of those thoughts and be really realistic with your standards, your goals, how much you can actually accomplish. And I am really big and known now for saying I don't like to-do lists. I don't work off to-do lists. If you currently work off to-do lists, like, just let them go, right? And the reason I say that is because I think for a lot of people, to-do lists can be super overwhelming because they don't give you any direction. They're not clear. They don't give you a time frame to do certain things. And when you have a list of things set out and you don't have any, Hold on, I see. Karen said, clearly needs to jump on this. I never go on Insta Lives. It's after midnight here in London. Thanks for sharing. Oh, thanks for being on. I know it is definitely late. 79. Yeah, it is definitely out. It's like almost 12:30. So I appreciate you being on. And I'm glad this was helpful for you. Catch the replay. I save all my lives, so you can catch the other tips on the replay tomorrow. Go ahead and get your sleep, girl. But yeah, so the second tip I was giving essentially was, so the reason why I say set reasonable goals, and when it comes to your day, I really like to like make sure that I don't work off a list, in the sense that if I have a long list of things, I treat that as like my starting point. I treat that as my brain dump. And then I make sure that I assign myself certain time frames to do things throughout the day, because when I have certain time frames to do things throughout the day, I can be more realistic with like achieving certain things throughout the day and working around my energy and not overexhausting myself, which perfectionists tend to do, right? We tend to like overexhaust ourselves, want to do everything for everyone, feeling like we can achieve everything at a certain standard, and we have to let go of that and be really reasonable and tune into ourselves, because the more aware you are of yourself, the more aware and better you'll be in life in general, especially with managing your personal and your professional life. So tip 1 was allow yourself to make mistakes. Tip 2, set reasonable goals for yourself. If you're a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist, you deal with perfectionism tendencies, you really got to make sure you are setting reasonable goals for yourself. The third thing, focus on meaning and your value instead of perfection. So this one helped me out a lot, because I really truly feel also that perfectionists tend to be procrastinators, right? And the reason we procrastinate on things is because we want it to be perfect. We feel like it's not good enough just yet, and we have really, really high standards. I feel like I've been saying that with every point, but y'all know what I mean. So one thing that helped me to put myself more out there and to like really go after opportunities, especially if you are trying something new this year, or you want to level up in your career, level up in your business, level up in your personal life, relationships, wellness, whatever it is. Start thinking about like how you can like add value to other people, like how you can do things that mean something to you. When you're really more focused on like value and meaning, you tend to take more action, because you're coming from a place of service, fulfillment, like what can you give, or what can you receive that will help you feel more full. And that's something that helped me really step it up, like with my coaching business. I just kept thinking about like, okay, every day I'm not going online, showing myself. Every time I'm saying no to something or an opportunity, or not pitching myself to be on platforms, a podcast, or to be on presentations, I'm stopping myself from like giving the value that I know I have. And I didn't just be given these gifts not to share them. So I would always caution that you really step out of yourself sometimes. Like if you're trying to let go of perfectionism, you really gotta like step out of yourself, step out of like the thoughts and the negativity that you have, and like step into like the person you want to be, and help the person you want to serve, or the people you want to serve. Carolyn said, thanks. Wash day and prayer is up for a bit longer. We'll check out the replay. God bless you. Have a fabulous weekend. I love that. I love that you're tuning in to me while you have your wash day and you got to take care of your hair. Appreciate that. So yeah. And then my last tip, because I'm going to wrap this up, is to lower the pressure that you put on yourself. So this is still something I struggle with, but when it comes to letting go of perfectionism, you really have to let go of all the pressure that you feel. And it's funny because I've been questioning the pressure that I feel. And every time I think about it, I'm like, no one puts this pressure on me. Like no one else, right? And if you deal with perfectionism, you know this. No one else is putting this perfection on us. We're putting it on ourselves, and we're literally creating these stories in our heads. And a lot of times you got to separate the story from the facts. And I talk about this with my clients all the time, because they'll say certain things and I'd be like, okay, that's the story you're telling yourself, and that's how you're saying you're feeling. But like, what are the actual facts that support this? And most of the time we have no facts, right? Like we're dealing with perfectionism, we're letting it hold us back. We're struggling to put things out. We're overthinking. We're taking long times to make any decisions. And you're doing all of that because you're literally like creating pressure on yourself that no one else has created. Like, have you ever experienced that? I think that's just the most wildest realization I've had lately, is like, I keep questioning like, who is actually putting this pressure on you besides yourself? Like, yes, it's important to have standards. Yes, it's important to do things to a certain caliber of work. But at the end of the day, like, who's putting that pressure on you? Are you putting it on yourself? Like, then you need to let it go. Like, let it go and just put something out there The thing is, like, you can always tweak, you can always adapt, you can always change, but you won't have anything to learn from unless you just let go of the perfectionism and do what you say you're going to do and stop procrastinating on it, right? So those are my 4 tips for letting go of perfectionism. Those are the 4 ways that have like truly transformed my life and helped me get opportunities I did not think I would ever get. I can't say that because I did think I would get them. But you know how you have a dream and you think you would get something, but then you're like, I don't know if it'll actually happen. You have that self-doubt. That's what I mean when I say that. Like, these are things that I've always dreamt of and I've had on lists, and now they're like coming into fruition. And I think it's solely from the idea of like letting go of perfectionism and allowing myself to like, get better every single day, but not really thinking of life in the term of like a journey or a destination. And the reason I say that is because I actually heard, I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it's from Mo Gawani, his name is, or something. It's called Diary of the CEO. It's Stephen Bartlett's podcast. It's really good. And I was listening to a podcast, and the episode was on happiness. And he was talking about like, we have to stop seeing life as a journey, because journeys imply some level of a destination, right? It implies some level of like, I got here and then now I'm going to go to the next thing. And it means that you kind of have gotten to this like one destination. And he said, start looking at life as like a quest. And I was like, well, I don't even know what a quest is. Like, I thought it was the same as a journey. But the way he explained it was, a quest is essentially someone always like on a constant just path, right? Like you're essentially just like constantly growing, constantly going, constantly growing, constantly going. And you're figuring things out as you go along. So there really is no one destination. You're just like figuring out what you need in this season, and you're continuing on. Figuring out what you need in this season, and then you're continuing on. And I was like, wow, like how deep is that? That is so deep to me. I was like, dang, life really is a quest. And like, if we think of it as like a search for something, for meaning in this one moment, and we just keep going, like it opens up so much for us where we don't feel like we really need to like be perfect. We more so just need to like keep going, keep learning, keep growing. So yeah, I wanted to share that. I thought that was really deep. If you want to listen to the whole episode, check it out because it was really, really good. It was Diary of the CEO podcast, and it was the episode on happiness. So yes, that was all the things I had for you guys. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Anything I shared that was interesting for you, if you're watching the replay, let me know. Like, what was some of your biggest takeaways in terms of perfectionism? I hope these 4 tips help you let go of it and inspire you to like every day question the thoughts that you're having, question the pressure you're putting on yourself, and just like put your stuff out there, because there's someone out there who needs whatever you are supposed to be giving, right? Even if it's just for yourself. I did also want to